Okay, so I'm going to go to speaker view. I just changed it to speaker view so people will see the speaker and not the gallery view, okay? Okay, so let me know when we're on. Okay, so good morning. Michael, are we live? All right. Okay. The other thing I'm going to do is record.
This meeting is being recorded.
All right, excellent. So I hope you can see me. I hope folks on Facebook and on YouTube, welcome. And I am very glad that you are here. I want to make sure our view is right. This is very exciting because this is our first time doing a live stream via Zoom and a live stream to Facebook. So please give us your technical feedback and let's just kind of see how this is going to go. If you have any comments, please put them in the chat because we're also monitoring our Facebook chat as soon as we figure out how to do that, to be brutally honest. Anyway, forgive us. This is our first time. So thank you again for being here at our One World Spiritual Center Sunday gathering. Many thanks to Michael Roussel for his time and skill in helping us get this to you. We are very grateful to Michael. So I am Reverend Melanie. I'm spiritual director of One World Spiritual Center, if you're not familiar with us. So who are we? We are an inner spiritual community up here in North Fulton. Actually, we have folks watching and listening from all over the place. And you may not have heard of the word interspiritual. So let me talk about that really briefly. Our goal here at One World is to draw on all the world's wisdom, and we have access to so much of it, to help each of us create a life of purpose and passion and joy and peace. Now, you may not have heard that word inner spiritual. It's really not complicated. It means that we find truth in all the world's enduring faith traditions. It means that no matter how each one conceives of the divine or imagines the divine or articulates the divine, it all goes to one truth. The way I think about it, and this is not an original thought, so forgive me, but the way I think about it is many, many fingers pointing at the same moon. Just think about that. You have many fingers pointing at the same moon. Each finger is different, but they are all pointing to the same truth. Sometimes, being human, we get fixated on the fingers and we think that they are the main event. But that's when our practices and our teachings bring us back to the truth of, as it is said in one of the world's oldest scriptures, the Rig Veda, that truth is one and the learned call it by many names. So here at One World, we study the wisdom from all the world's enduring faith tradition because they all lead to that one truth. So today I am super excited because we are bringing you a conversation with Debonee Morgan, who is on with me. Debonee is the executive director of Zeitgeist, which is a community for the spiritually independent. I know that sounds familiar. This is very exciting. We are very aligned with the principles and the theories of Zeitgeist, and you are going to learn more about that. So Zeitgeist offers programs and events that explore modern spirituality and what that looks like in today's fast-changing world. It doesn't look like what it used to. So I'm very grateful to Debonee to take the time to speak with us. After our gathering, we are going to have our monthly community meeting. We used to call it a hug meeting, help us grow. Many of us still do call it that, but we're going to have a community meeting after on Zoom. If you need that Zoom link, please go ahead and email us at info@oneworldspiritualcenter.net and we will send it to you. It's the same Zoom link we use for Wednesday discussions and also for our morning meditation every Monday through Friday at 10. So thank you again for being here. I'm super excited for this conversation with Debonee and just for the opportunity to be together with all of you and to be together live. We've been doing this for 2 years pre-recorded, and now we just get to do it live, which is way fun. So let's get started. And we're going to start the way we do every week. We are going to take a breath and bring our awareness and our focus to this moment. There is so much going on in our busy worlds, in our busy lives. If your day has been anything like mine, you've already been just churning and zooming around all over the place. So just take a breath, settle into your chair wherever you are, and bring your awareness to this particular beautiful, irreplaceable moment, this right now. And as I light this candle, what we are doing is bringing the light of spirit into this moment. We call on that light to illuminate our hearts, to illuminate our gathering, to touch all who are listening or watching here. May we enter this time now as sacred time, as time apart, putting down the cares of our day, being willing to simply rest in this moment and be open to the voice of spirit. One of the truths we find in our spiritual practices is that we don't have to reserve a certain time for the holy or for the sacred. We are surrounded with it at all times. We enter into, sorry, that's my Alexa, and I'm turning it off. We enter into sacred time whenever we become aware of the holiness of each moment, of each interaction, of all of creation around us. We are surrounded by the holy, by the sacred at all times. And all we have to do to bring it into our awareness is simply remember. We remember who we are. We remember the truth of who we are. That we are expressions of the divine. We are the word of the divine, which is speaking as each of us in every moment. So take a breath and just sit with that thought as we enter this time of awakening, this time of unfolding, this time of opportunity, this time of community. So for our opening prayer, I'd like to share with you, it's a prayer by Andre Moll, and it's called All That We Share is Sacred. And it was written in honor of two Unitarians, Reverend Waitzel Sharp and his wife, Martha Sharp, who during World War II left their family, their small children behind in the U.S. and traveled to Europe to assist escaping Jews during the Holocaust, including transports of children. The Reverends Sharp later became the second and third Americans honored by Israel's Yad Vashem as righteous among the nations, an honor granted to non-Jews who risked their lives to save Jews during the Holocaust. It's a beautiful prayer, so I invite you simply to rest in these beautiful thoughts as you listen. As we gather together, may we remember, when you share with me what is most important to you, that is where listening begins. When I show you that I hear you, when I say your life matters, that is where compassion begins. When I open the door to greet you, that is where hospitality begins. When I venture out to bring you to shelter, that is where love begins. When I risk my comfort to ease your suffering, when I act against hatred, violence, and injustice, that is where courage begins. When we experience the full presence of each other because of our shared humanity, because of our differences, that is where holy gratitude begins. May this space be a table that is not complete until all are welcome. May this table be a space of beauty where together we create a series of miracles and where all that we share is sacred. May it be so. What a wonderful energy to move forward. So what I would like to do now is I'm going to change my Zoom settings, so stick with me. And I'm going to bring Debonee Morgan on, and we are going to have a conversation on Zeitgeist, on interspirituality, on spiritual companioning. And I've called this Interspiritual Voices, a conversation with Debonee Morgan, and I hope to make a series of interspiritual voices, bringing in other wonderful speakers, other wonderful guests. And Debonee, you are our first. Yay! Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Folks, this
I'm
is
so
Debonee
excited
Morgan.
to be here.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. So what I would like to do is I told Debonee that we have about 20 minutes, and then I called her yesterday, and I started out with what I wanted to talk about, and it's going to be at least an hour and a half. So,
Right.
no, so everybody go get some coffee. But no, it's going to be fascinating. And thank you, Debonee, so much. So let's start off. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, which is fascinating.
Well, I think a good way to start that is by saying how at home I feel based on just how you've started your gathering here. Everything that you've said is something that feels very familiar and welcoming to me. So a different way to ask the question would be, okay, so how did I get to this place where I feel at home with the community that sees one truth, right? Because I started out at what I think historically is the first big mega church, Calvary Chapel, Chuck Smith's church in Southern California. And so, yeah, I was hanging with the evangelical crowd, and it felt good, but I just, something in the back of my mind never really solidly sat with salvation theology. It just, it's like there's a good part here, but there's also a part that kind of creates friction, and that wasn't comfortable for me. I ended up graduating from a Bible college, very conservative Bible college, where I had to sign a pledge that I wouldn't dance or watch movies, and I broke that pledge. But again, it was like there was good things, but that was where I was introduced to feminist theology and liberation theology. It turned out the religion department were the liberal guys, and so that really surprised me. I didn't expect that, and eventually ended up with a spiritual director when I was in a time of crisis. And I'm not exaggerating when I say she saved my life, but that's a story for another day. The point being, at some point she said to me, you might be a good spiritual director. So that led me to the Still Point community in Pasadena. And what they do is teach people how to do spiritual direction. And Zeitgeist does that too. So I'm sure we'll talk about that in a minute. But that was my connection with them. And that was one of the first times I felt truly at home, because it wasn't about faith. It was about faith, but it wasn't about doctrine. It wasn't about dogma. It wasn't about this is what we believe here. It was about bring what you believe here and let us be in community together. And that was kind of mind blowing, and accelerated my spiritual growth exponentially. And then I came upon Richard Rohr. I read his book, A Falling Upward, and it was one of the first books that I've ever held in my hands with a highlighter, highlighting every sentence. And at some point I thought, okay, this is ridiculous. Let's just not use the highlighter.
I love
because
that book.
every word spoke to me. And I said, I don't know who this guy is, but I need more. And at that point, I was just moving here to Atlanta. I'm originally from Los Angeles. And a friend said, hey, do you get Richard Rohr's daily meditations? I said, no, I don't. She goes, well, just go out to the website and sign up for that. So I went out to the website, and it said, we've got a new thing, and it's called the Living School. And if you if you're hungry for more, sign up. And every cell in my body said, you must do this. This is what you must do. And so I was very, very blessed and fortunate, and it was providential that I was in the inaugural class of that. So when you said I'm the first today, it's like I've got a whole synchronicity of firsts, right? And so I was in the inaugural cohort of the Living School, studying with Richard and Cynthia Bergeau and Jim Finley and Ilya DeLeo and Robert Sardallo. It was
I'm beyond jealous. Just
it
stop
was
it. It's too painful.
it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool, and that just changed the entire trajectory of my spirituality and what I wanted to do with my life. You know, so that's my background.
Now, you also went to a place called Still Point.
Yeah, Still Point is where I did my spiritual direction training. Yeah.
Okay, that is way cool. I got on in preparation for this talk here, I got on the Still Point website, and it's out
They're
in California.
terrific.
They are beyond perfect. They talk about, they have buttons for centering prayer, wisdom chanting, and contemplative liturgies.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I thought I was home because, you know, folks who are listening who know me know I am all about contemplative practices. I mean, my One World group thinks if I ever say we need daily practice again, they're all just going to find me and hurt me, you know, because I talk about it so much. But I want to say hi to Judy. Judy, I see your face. How you doing?
Hi.
But yeah, I was very thrilled at Still Point. So tell us a little bit about that experience.
Well, in order for me to say about my experience there, I have to start by saying it was total imposter syndrome, right? Because when my spiritual director said, you should consider this, it's like, yeah, but I mean, I'm me. Like, I'm not a spiritual teacher. I'm not like wisdom and everything. I'm kind of rock and roll. And I was like, oh, well, you know, that's not the place for somebody like me. And I walked in the door and they said, hey, let's start by breathing. Let's just breathe together, you know, as you did here. And I was like, okay, that's cool. And the guy sitting next to me took a big noisy breath and he said, yeah, we breathe loud around here. And I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. And I was afraid that they wouldn't be queer friendly until I found out that almost all the men in the group were gay. And I was afraid that they would, you know, it would be a place of putting the weight of Christian doctrine on you. And it wasn't like that. It was just so welcoming. And so I did my certification there. So it was 3 years I spent with Still Point. And they've just gotten even better since then.
Oh man.
Yeah, they believe in formation, but not formation that is an external structure put upon you, but more of an invitation to build your own interior scaffolding. And so
that's like Richard Rohr says.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And hopefully just like what we do at ZG, they were, you know, when I was asked to do a spiritual direction training program, of course, I'm like, well, I can't do what Still Point did. But I thought maybe God could. So let's give this a chance. You know, if it's up to me, we're in trouble, but happily nothing's ever totally up to us. So
that's true. So tell us about Zeitgeist. I would love to. I've been following Zeitgeist for about a year. It's a wonderful organization. Tell us about how it started, its mission, its inspiration.
Thank you so much for asking. Well, first of all, it's hoping to align with the wonderful things that Still Point does and the wonderful things from the Living School. You know, we take all of our inspiration from the same place. The genesis of it is that I'm also a psychotherapist. And when I was interviewing for a job at the Caring Counseling Center of Georgia, which is unfortunately no longer around, they've been amalgamated into another organization. But during the interview, the director there said, hey, you're a spiritual director. We've always wanted to do a program to train spiritual directors. Do you think you could do that? And, you know, I didn't think I could do that, but I said yes anyway, because that's, you know, how life gets fun. But I said, I'll only do it under one condition. We have to welcome all faiths and all paradigms, and including people who don't fit into a faith paradigm. And we have to be inclusive in the kind of people we attract. At that point, I hadn't met Larita Coleman Brown, but I did not know a person of color that was a spiritual director in Atlanta. I did not, with the exception of Rabbi Josh, I did not know a queer spiritual director in Atlanta. It doesn't mean that they weren't necessarily there, but there was no prominence, you know. And I said, we need to change the face of what it looks like to be a spiritual director.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's many lovely white Christian older women out there. Some of my best friends fit that description, and when I wake up in the morning, I realize so do I. But we need more than that. And
Right.
so they blessed that. And the original organization started within their parentheses. The following year, lots of transitions. We were aligned with the One River organization for a while with Rabbi Rami, and that was a wonderful experience. And they're very supportive, but they didn't really have the infrastructure to go where we needed to go. And so we're still very tightly aligned, but we became our own for a while with Rabbi Rami, and that was a wonderful experience.
Okay.
We got a little bit of
Now we're
feedback going on.
having some
Yeah,
feedback here.
yeah. So we became our own nonprofit and kind of moved beyond just training spiritual directors. I'm proud to say at this point we have 2 graduating classes and 3 cohorts that are still going on now in the spiritual direction training program. And I'm also happy to report that we're attracting the kind of people we were hoping to. So we have a lot of diversity and hopefully equity and inclusivity as well. You know, we always try to get better and better at that. But yeah, so it's going great, and we are a little bit at a time chipping away with the face of spiritual directors locally, and then now we have some people out of state as well because
Right.
of Zoom.
Oh, excellent. Now,
Yeah.
let me ask you that. We're talking about, I wanted to talk a little bit more about Zeitgeist. We're doing fine on time. But when I think of spiritual unfolding and I think of the spiritual journey, I think of an interior journey. You know, they always say, you know, you ask a Christian, where is God? And they point up. You ask somebody who follows the Dharma, where is God? And they point within. The Sanatana Dharma, the Hindu tradition. Okay. But what I hear you saying now and in earlier conversations is spiritual direction is really spiritual companioning.
Yes.
And one of the things that Still Point says on their website is the spiritual journey needs companionship. So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. The language spiritual direction is historical. We've inherited that. And so on the one hand, you kind of need to use that so people know what you're talking about. But really, we're all of us, our international organization is Spiritual Directors International, and they sort of lead the way for us spiritual directors around the world. And they are championing the word companioning. So they even changed the URL for the website. So yeah, because it's not about direction. When my directees sit with me, I'm not telling them what to do. I'm not telling them what's right or wrong. I'm not telling them, you know, what they should be discerning. I just sit quietly. And I think the reason that even though it's an interior endeavor, that when you sit with somebody else, it provides clarity for that endeavor, right? It sort of creates a space for the muck and the dirt to sort of filter down to the bottom and become still, right? We reflect back to the people we sit with. We sometimes ask questions to invite a deeper consideration. And so if we're left up to our own devices, if the only thing we have is an interior journey, then it'll be a little hard for us to tell when the ego's kind of jumping in and creating some hurdles for us. You know, like in the Indian tradition, you might work with a guru. If you are in a Zen tradition, you'll have a sensei or some sort of master, right? That, you know, it always helps. And let me say this differently. I don't mean to say that spiritual directors work in the exact same way, but the point being that having somebody else to reflect with us and to encourage us is healthy in the long run.
Well, what I hear you saying is it's not only healthy, it is super beneficial.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
if I can share an example real quick, Melanie, I made an allusion earlier from my own spiritual director, Shailene Camry Hoggett, who's amazing. that when I came to her, I was in a bad place. That doesn't mean that everybody who initiates a spiritual companioning relationship needs to start there. You can come when things are absolutely great.
Mhm.
But I was experiencing what we would now look back on and call a dark night of the soul. And so, because I was in a place where I felt I couldn't connect with God, somebody else holding that space for me got
Right.
me through until the place that I could. Left to my own devices, I would have walked away because I either felt like there was no God in the world, or if there was, she didn't like me.
Mhm.
Right? Left to my own devices, I would have been stuck in that and more than likely walked away and just done something different with my life. But because I had this companion relationship, she would hold my anger, she would hold my pain, she would hold my confusion and be with me through that, which led me to stick with it and get to the other side.
Right.
So that's an example of the benefit of companionship.
It's somebody who really, the way I think of it, as you explain it, is really somebody who can hold a container for
Yes.
you to, without judgment and without fear and without need to control the outcome, you can create your own awakening.
Absolutely.
And you can come to your own insights. I think of it kind
Yes.
of as an anamkara in a bit of a
Yes.
different way,
Yes.
a soul
Yes.
friend
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
helps you that just holds space for you and reminds you on a continual basis that you are beloved and
Right.
that you are unfolding as you should, which is a wonderful,
Right.
I mean, we all need permission to know that because we're so
Yeah.
judgmental and we're so hard on ourselves, much more so than we are on our friends or others.
Yes, yes, yes. And like a therapeutic relationship, it's one-sided. You know, that your director, your companion is not going to expect you to hold their burden.
Right.
So it's your special time to just focus on and honor your spirituality without any obligations.
Okay. So
Which
you
of course
have,
mirrors a divine relationship as well, right? That God is canonically, giving, 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 giving.
that's another wonderful conversation.
Yeah.
So if somebody listening or watching here wants to look into spiritual companioning, they would contact you and they would say, I'm interested in this resource. Is that how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. And also on our website, which I need to
Mhm.
update a little bit, but it's mostly good. We have one of our navigations is spiritual directors, and so you can see the people that are either graduate from our school or currently in the program that are working with directees or companions. So we have people available there as well.
Okay. And your website is zgatl.org?
You got it. zgatl.org.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so let's talk for a second because we still have some time, which is wonderful. Let's talk for a second about the spiritually independent because that's what Zeitgeist is, spiritually independent. So tell me, how do I know, using me as how do I know if I'm spiritually independent? I mean, how would I know what Zeitgeist is for me?
Yeah. Everything that you said at the top of our community gathering here was so spot on. I was even going to quote the Rig Veda too, but you got there first, right? It's if you're in a faith tradition and you're getting something out of that faith tradition, you're following the rituals and the ideology of that, and it feels real good to you, you can still be spiritually independent if you're curious and seeing the truth in other traditions as well. Then you're spiritual independent. If you grew up in a faith and felt like you needed to leave that faith, as a psychotherapist, I really work a lot with spiritual wounding and trauma, because we all know that in most faiths that goes on. And so you may still be yearning for God, but in a different language or different container. And so you might be spiritually independent there. Or if you've never really gravitated towards the more traditional faith paradigms, but you're seeking, you're open, you're interested, and you find wisdom in the perennial ideology, perennial scriptures, perennial community, right? The things that are true across the board and across history. then I would call that spiritually independent. As a matter of fact, because I had my one world wisdom Bible that I know you're
Yes.
familiar with. And, Rami quotes the Rig Veda in that. But I just wanted to quote Rabbi Rami Shapiro from One River, where he says, truth is that which transcends the binaries of sacred and profane, heaven and earth, creator and creation, and allows us to cultivate an awareness wherein we may encounter every mundane, finite, nameable this as a manifestation of the infinite, ineffable, and divine, that of which we were all a part. So if that resonates with you, and Melanie, if everything that you'd said earlier resonates, then that's what being spiritually independent is all about.
Don't you think? I mean, One World is made up of people. I mean, very few people who attend One World, pretty much none, grew up in an interspiritual tradition. All of us, me included, I grew up as an Episcopal.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of still a little Episcopal bits in me, but a lot of it didn't resonate. So I grew away from it. And a lot of us did, a lot of folks listening here as well.
Yeah.
What is your thought? I mean, it seems to me that really interspirituality or spiritual independence is kind of the wave of the future. I remember a quote, Carl McColman taught us a quote, I think it was by a guy named McNamara, who said, the Christian of the future will be a mystic or he won't exist at all.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that is the way we are going, as pews in traditional churches just empty, but people, that's what to me is so sad. People say, I don't believe in that God, so I'm just not going to worry about God at all. But my response, and yours, I suspect as well, is I don't believe in that God either.
Right.
But there's a huge landscape out there that she populates and that she inhabits.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Agree completely.
Yeah. And it's a wonderful challenge to people who are trying to enter into or jump into that whole world of finding the holy in the world of the spiritually independent, because you really can craft whatever you want. I mean, we can have a gathering like this. We can do chanting, like Still Point says, wisdom chanting. How cool is that? I've never done wisdom chanting, but I'm sure it would be way cool. Sweat lodges, contemplative liturgies, all that stuff. There is so much wealth out there to structure our own path.
Yeah. And, something that Richard teaches at Living School and really resonated with me was the idea of, he was originally calling it the stool, the three-legged stool. And then I think we encouraged him to start calling it a tricycle. And then my friend Scott Macklin added the little bell on the tricycle. But the idea that the three main, the foundation of the structure you build, to be stable, you want to have some sort of reference to holy texts of some sort. It doesn't mean that you pick one and stick with it, but having some familiarity of the wisdom that came before you is helpful. And also, you want some sort of community or sense of ritual that goes with that. And then the third one would be your own experience.
Right.
And so his example was, if you've got too much ritual and aren't so worried about the text, or not so worried about your personal experience, then you've got the Catholic Church. If you've got too much emphasis on the text without paying a lot of attention to the ritual or the personal experience, then you've got evangelical churches. Right? If you only look at your own experience without having any foundation in community or ritual, or not any foundation in respecting the wisdom that's come before you, then that might be some new age stuff that doesn't value the whole. Right? But in my mind, I really like that and the bell was the joy.
Don't forget that.
You got to ring the bell. You got to ring the bell. But, you want to be balanced in all of that. You want to be balanced. And I think if we look at the three parts, the part that has been missing the most, and I think this is where the mysticism comes in, is the personal experience.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking mostly of Christian churches here because I don't have the experience within other faith traditions. So forgive me for mostly leaning on that. But I think in this country, our culture is mostly formed by the Christian church. And so I think that it impacts everybody, even if that's not the tradition you grew up in. But we've neglected personal experience in lieu of, well, you just have to show up, or you just have to read this, without sitting with your interior experience of that. In other words, the mystical piece of that, which is why I think that's the future, is we've been unbalanced through all of history in the Christian tradition.
So that's why Zeitgeist, this is such a great pivot. That's why Zeitgeist's mission is education, practice, and community. It's those three legs.
It is.
But I think in the Western Christian church that we not only neglect practice, which we at One World stress, calling ourselves a community of practice, we actively disincentivize people from doing it. We discourage it, because what it does is it makes you independent. It means I can find God on my own. I don't need you. I'm going to go and sit in nature. I'm going to go dance. I'm going to sing. I have my own path to finding the holy. And that's scary when you're trying to structure an organization.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're out of time, but I do want to ask you a couple more quick questions.
Sure. Be quick.
No, don't know. I'm being quick, but I'm from New York. I talk like a tobacco auctioneer. So that's just my background. What is up next for Zeitgeist? What do you have coming up that our folks can sign up for and benefit from? I took a workshop there with Mitch Cohen, one of our beloved speakers, on Kabbalah, which was wonderful.
Yeah,
so tell us what's coming up.
Well, since you've mentioned Mitch, what's coming up on your calendar is Mitch teaching Gospel of Thomas. And so we're going to promote that and consider that a co-event, because we want to help you with that. What we've got coming up is Dr. Sherry Kling is going to be doing a retreat day for us. And I would have been smart to have that date on the top of my head. I believe it's the end of March, Saturday, the end of March.
Yeah.
And so she is coming from a place of process spirituality that includes in a lot of the mystic teachings, a lot of Jung, a lot of dream work, and that's called the whole making nearness of God. And so the afternoon is going to include a lot of dream work, and there'll be a lot of quiet time in there, and then a little bit of lecture on process theology, which I'm really excited about because I'm not as familiar with that as I'd like to be. And then in the early summer, late spring, we're going to be doing some sort of field trip. Obviously, COVID is throwing a monkey wrench in our ability to plan in-person events that involve attending some other place. But we want to have a chance to get together in person if it's safe, and travel. We've got a couple of different ideas on the docket, but we haven't chosen one yet. But just to have sort of like a field trip, a get together, go visit the Holy Spirit Monastery, or there's some places in North Georgia we're looking at, and just be together and explore a place that has some spiritual gravity to it. And then in the late summer, I think we're definitely looking at September. We haven't nailed down the exact date, but Carl McColman is going to be leading a panel for us. A lot of people know Carl as a Christian wisdom teacher, a Christian mystic teacher, and that indeed he is an excellent one. But Carl has a broader background than a lot of people realize, and he's very familiar with some pagan practices, some shamanic practices, and hermetic practices.
Wow.
And there's not a lot going on, and when it comes to hermeticism, I think a lot of people, there's some that do know that deeply, but a lot of us don't have a big handle on that. So we're going to do a panel. And we want to get in somebody who's an expert on the tarot. We want to get in an expert on Kabbalah. The Kabbalah with a Q is different. So we're going to do Q Kabbalah, and get a few different magic practitioners and people who are approaching their spirituality from the stance that might be off-putting to people who learned that was dangerous or wrong or scary or occultic. Right. And so we want to discuss how is that? How does that work in with a perennial paradigm? And that's going to be really exciting. And then
sign us up for that. We have some folks in this community who will be there.
Oh, I'm really excited, and I hope that y'all will. And then end of November, kind of I think it's the week before Thanksgiving, Rabbi Mitch, who y'all will get to meet when he speaks about the Gospel of Thomas, is leading a silent retreat at Ignatius House, and so it will be mostly time in silence for a few days. Although we will be having some lectures and some teaching in the evening as well. And that one's limited to 10 people. So once we start really promoting that and putting registration out there, if you want to do it, grab it quick, because that will probably fill up. There might be people who don't get to participate if you snooze and lose.
I went to his last one. He had one in November of 2019.
Oh, that's right.
And I went to that one. It was fabulous. I call it my not so silent retreat because I miserably failed on several particulars. But it was wonderful. You know what I remember about that? And then we're going to move on, and I want to thank you for being here. But I remember we meditated for like 3 hours a day. I mean, we would have 40 minutes here, 40 minutes here, 40 minutes here. And I didn't think I could do it. And it worked, and it was wonderful.
I'm excited that you did that. Yeah,
yes,
that's great.
Amazing. All right.
You'll have another opportunity.
Yes, ma'am. Looking forward to it. Well, I want to thank Debonee for being here. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Melanie. It's been a delight to get to meet some of your folks here.
No, it's been wonderful. Thank you so much. So we are going to move on. I'm going to mess around with the Zoom a little bit, so forgive me. Who knows what will happen? My computer may burst into flame. But thank you, Debonee. We're going to continue to follow Zeitgeist. And I just want to say I am so looking forward to our future collaborations, and we will definitely have you back.
Oh, that's wonderful. Me too. ZGATL.org.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. All right. Whoops. Hang on. Okay. So I hope you enjoyed that. I loved it. Debonee, that was just fascinating. And we were going to talk about her podcast. We'll talk about that next time. But what I'd like to do now, and I realize you've all been sitting for a while, and thank you so much, is I just want to take some time and hold our community in prayer. We have some specific prayers. If anybody has a prayer concern that you want to raise, please email it to me ahead of time or call me. When I get the Facebook chat figured out, we'll be able to put them in the chat, but I have no guarantee I'll be able to see it today because this is our first time out. So if you do have a prayer concern, please let me know, and we'll continue to pray for you every week as we do. So let's just take a minute right now and just prepare to share our light and share our love and hold some of our beloved in prayer, hold our community in prayer, and spread our consciousness, which knows no walls and no boundaries, to hold all sentient beings in prayer, all of life in our hearts and in our light. So take a breath. Anchor your awareness in your heart space, calming your busy mind as we join our energies and our love and our light together. Mother, Father, God, we give thanks for this time right now, for this beloved community, for the wisdom we share and learn, for the gifts that we bring and receive, for the opportunity we have to be the hands and the feet and the voice of the divine here on earth, to touch others, to lift each other up, to do what we can to widen the consciousness of peace and compassion and love, which is the truth at the essence, at the center of each of us. We are grateful for this right now. And so it is. And together we say, Amen. I do have two particular prayer concerns that I want to raise. Our own Tina is having surgery tomorrow. I want to hold her in our hearts. And our own beloved Asha is recovering from surgery and doing well. And I just want to hold her in our heart and in our light and in our love. So let's just take a moment and sit in the silence, holding Tina and Asha and all our beloved in our hearts. If you have a particular beloved in your heart or an upcoming situation or a circumstance or a horizon over which you cannot see, that you are unsure as you approach. Just let that rest in your awareness for right now, knowing that you are heard, knowing that you are sustained, knowing that you and all your beloved are held in the loving arms of Spirit and that all is well. So let's just take a breath and take a moment together. Sweet Spirit, we hold in our hearts and we send healing light and love and energy to Tina, to Asha, to all our beloved, whom we hold so dear. May they be uplifted. May their minds and their hearts be at peace. May they know that they do not walk alone, that they are uplifted in light and love and comfort and strength. And we widen the circle to include all beings so that peace and safety and equity and justice may flow out over all beings. May all be protected. May all be lifted up. May all be comforted and whole and safe and renewed. We open our hearts to all beings. We dedicate our gifts and our talents to peace, to love, to the beloved community we know can be. And so it is. And together we say, Amen. Thank you for that. For holding ourselves, each other, our community, all our beloved in prayer. So before we close, I'm going to take this opportunity to run through some announcements. And the reason I'm doing that is because we send out our newsletter, and I want to promote the newsletter. Muthu, our own Dr. Muthu Subramaniam, is doing a beyond fabulous job with our newsletter. I thank him so much. He works at it every week, and it's perfect and wonderful, and it arrives in your inbox. And I want to make sure that the announcements that are in it, our own upcoming events, are highlighted, so I'm going to run through them real quick. This Wednesday, at our Wednesday evening discussion, 7 o'clock, Muthu is leading our discussion on a recent podcast by Eckhart Tolle. It's called How to Balance Your Life in 2022. Okay, there are two things that are way cool about that. One, it's going to show us how to balance our lives in 2022. And two, it's in 12 minutes. This is great. All you got to do is devote 12 minutes and you'll be in balance. Okay, so we're going to listen to that, and then we're going to have a discussion on how we can balance our own lives in 2022. Next week, we are also going to have a live stream gathering. I'm going to spend the week working on Zoom, working on YouTube, but we'll be back at 11 with an online gathering, live streaming on Facebook and YouTube. I also want to highlight our morning meditation. It's funny because I'm going to make a general statement. Every religious practice has a daily practice, which brings us peace, brings us centering, is something that anchors us every day. And for me, and I think for many of us in One World, or some of us in One World, our morning meditation is turning into that. We have 5 minutes of, there's Gay, yes. We have 5 minutes of silent reflection and meditation. We have a prayer at the beginning and a prayer at the end. We also have a little time off recording to simply connect with each other and find out how we're doing. So we have community, we have practice, and we have education. This is great. We have what Zeitgeist does. It's about 20 minutes Monday through Friday at 10 o'clock. Reverend Chris Kell leads a guided meditation on Friday. They are beyond amazing. My meditations are, sit and breathe, and here's a prayer, and it's wonderful too. But her guided meditations, as I've said before, have taken me to places I couldn't find on a map. They are amazing, and I advocate them. So if you would like to join our morning meditation Sangha, you are more than welcome to do it. It's on this Zoom link, Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. On February 13th, we're going to have another hybrid service in person and online. That's going to be again at Mosaic Films at 11 o'clock. That's a Sunday, February 13th. Our guest musician is going to be Jennifer Farron. That is going to be way fun. So please join us for that. Okay, now we are also trying to organize, if anyone's interested, a tour of Ignatius House. Ignatius House on Riverside Drive, which Debonee is very familiar with, is a fabulous resource. That is where Mitch is going to have his retreat. That is where he had his last retreat. Their resources are beyond amazing. They have beautiful walking paths. They have great classes. They have a retreat house. Yes, Gay has been there. They have a retreat house. If you want to stay, they have a library to go sit. It is a gem just here in the middle of Atlanta. And they are having tours now through May of this year. So I would love for us to get together and do a tour. So if you are interested in doing a tour of Ignatius House, please email me at info@oneworldspiritualcenter.net or call me, or if you see me on February 13th, come up and, Melanie, I want to go to Ignatius House, whatever. Just please let me know about that, because that would be way fun. I already have some interest in some folks who want to do that. So please, let's just go ahead and do that. It's probably a couple hours. It's very fun. The Women's Interfaith Network, which is another organization here in Atlanta, is having a Zoom discussion on significant women of faith. They are devoting this year to women of scripture. And on January 30th, from 2:30 to 4, they are having a Zoom discussion on significant women of faith. Look at the newsletter. I'll plug for the newsletter. And there's a link there to sign up. You can pre-register, and you are certainly invited to do that. If anybody has anything they want to put in the announcements, please let me know, and I will stick it in future announcements. As I get more technically adept, I will even pick it up from the chat, I promise you. But I am asking you to forgive me for this week. I also asked Reverend Rebecca Johnson, our youth director, what our kids are doing. Reverend Rebecca has a call every Sunday at 10 on another Zoom number with our kids. And she talks about the same spiritual principles that we talk about and we practice. And it is so beyond valuable for our kids. It gives them a spiritual grounding. It gives them their own Sangha to talk with and to get support from. And especially during this time of COVID, when so much weirdness is going on with schools, we're here, we're not, we're sort of, we're not. It's wonderful for our kids to do that. So she texted me and told me that this month they are looking at faith. And she says it is defined as serene trust. I love that word, serene. We don't use it enough. Everyone work it into a sentence today. Serene. It's a great word. Faith is defined as serene trust. The practice of spirituality, along with being faithful, will bring forth your dreams and fulfill your needs. I am so grateful to Reverend Rebecca for all she does for our kids, and I'm grateful to each one of our kids as well for bringing all their gifts to their own particular beloved community. So as we close, thank you so much for joining us at our first purely online live event. I got to tell you, I've spent 2 years doing pre-recorded videos, looking at a camera. This is way more fun. This is just way more fun. I'd like to close with a blessing by John O'Donohue, one of my favorite authors, from his book Benedictus, a book of blessings. So I invite you to listen. May your past be a pleasant memory, your future filled with delight and mystery, your now a glorious moment that fills your life with deep contentment. May your day be filled with blessings like the sun that lights the sky, and may you always have the courage to spread your wings and fly. May the blessings of light be upon you, light within and light without, and in all your comings and goings, may you ever have a kindly greeting from them you meet along the road. May the nourishment of the earth be yours. May the clarity of light be yours. May the fluency of the ocean be yours. May the protection of the ancestors be yours. And so it is. So we are concluded. Have a blessed day. And we will jump on this particular Zoom link. We're going to stop our live streaming and have our community meeting. But many blessings. Many thanks to Debonee. And have a blessed day. We'll see you next